So once more, thanks again for joining. I proceed with briefly introducing our speakers for today, and then leave them the stage for the keynote speaker session. So I'll start with sorry for this. I'll start with Jane Kinninmont. Jane Kinninmont is Chief Executive Officer of the United Nations Association UK. Previously, as a Policy Impact Director at the European Leadership Network, she worked to strengthen the influence, policy and relevance, and the impact of the organization research, convening, and networks. Before that, as the head of the program as the Elders, she focused on promoting diplomatic and political solutions to conflict, supporting multilateral approaches to peacemaking, and advocating for the rights of dignity of refugees. Early in her career, Jane was deputy head of the Senior Research Fellow in the Middle East and North Africa program at the Chatham House, where she led research on generation change in the Gulf monarchies, regional conflicts, and Gulf relations in Iraq, Iran, and Yemen. She also held senior roles at the Economist Group and the Economist Intelligence Unit, providing analysis on the Middle East and Africa. A widely published commentator on the international affair, she had written for publication including The Economist, Financial Times, and The Guardian, and appears regularly in broadcast media. She holds degrees from Oxford University and SOAS. Professor Shang is the Professor of Biomedical Science at School of Human Sciences in London Metropolitan University. He's a founding director of the Biological Security Research Centre at London Metropolitan University. His research focuses mainly on ion channels in health disease, and since 2015, he expanded his research interest into biochemical weapons and science convergence as he wished to incorporate studies of the social impact of the advances in the life sciences. Since 2020, Professor Shang is leading a series of projects in the effort to provide a civil society input to the broad biological and toxin weapon convention. For example, he's leading the Joseph Rowntree Charitable Trust-funded project titled as Building Up an International Biological Security Education Network and introducing biosecurity education to school. And without further ado, I leave the stage to our first speaker, Jane Kinninmont. Thank you.
Thank you, Matteo. It's lovely to be here and to have a chance to engage with this group, this Nobel Prize-winning group, with its long tradition of using science for the betterment of humanity. Now, I'm afraid when I was a teenager, my school reports, which I unearthed recently, did say that I really should try to care about science and see its importance. I loved English and poetry and politics. But it turns out that my teachers were right. There is something fundamental about science that is non-zero sum, that is about the collective public good, crossing borders, that could certainly teach politics a few things. And looking at the political and policy side of our nuclear field, it has been too divided in recent years about what people think is the best way to deal with nuclear risk, which can be broadly summarized as deterrence versus disarmament. Those debates are entangled in wider views about how power is distributed in the world, as at the end of the day, people who are more in favour of focusing on stable deterrence tend to have certain beliefs about the responsibility and behaviour of nuclear-armed states, whereas disarmament tends to reflect a more global perspective that doesn't necessarily trust those nuclear weapon states to behave in a responsible and predictable manner. And there's a lot of good stuff to discuss and debate, but clearly, in this very disordered moment that we are in, the field needs to get beyond what can become quite kind of toxic polarization, because at the end of the day, let's focus again on the shared interest. Everyone has a common interest in ensuring that deterrence does not break down in an unstable and violent way. And conversely, I think it is increasingly clear to people, including people in Western defence establishments, that deterrence cannot be guaranteed to be 100% reliable forever. We are increasingly hearing people from European defence establishments talk about the possible return of interstate war to wider parts of Europe. The jury is really out on whether that could be a conventional war or whether we're looking more at an intensification of the hybrid threats that we're already seeing. You think about the damage that could be done to Western European societies through actions such as severing the undersea data cables and taking down the internet, for example. But there are, at the same time, genuine discussions about the return of land warfare to Western Europe. It's being taken seriously by the same people who take nuclear deterrence seriously and practice it. And then, of course, the debates that have always existed about the credibility of extended deterrence are intensifying at high speed because of the changed attitude of the current US administration towards NATO and to allies. It's also always struck me as very interesting that people within militaries who look at nuclear risk, they take the role of miscalculation very seriously. That, so far we have had 80 years where in nuclear crises, sanity has prevailed. But there have been a number of near misses. And generally, people in military and defence establishments looking at risks of deterrence will see the potential for there to be misunderstandings, miscalculations, that those things could be intensified by misinformation and disinformation, and the very compressed time that would exist in a nuclear crisis to make absolute, bigger than life and death decisions. Looking right now at the war that is playing out in the Middle East, I'm not someone that's predicting that would escalate to a nuclear level. I do want to note that since I'm bringing it into this discussion. But one of the things that we are seeing playing out in real time now is the role of miscalculation, both by the US and by Iran, for all the bluster on both sides. Iran thought that it had an effective deterrence of the US and Israel that collapsed. And the US seems to have had many incredibly detailed scenario plans produced over 40 years by the military that looked at exactly what's happening now in terms of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, but it wasn't taken seriously at the correct time by political decision makers who underestimated predictable threats. And we see, there is a role of psychology, there is a role of hubris, there is a role of irrationality. There is a role, both in Iran and the US, in their very different political systems, of judgments being made because there are autocratic elements to systems and people don't want to tell the person in charge that they're wrong. We saw this also with Putin's invasion of Ukraine, that there were incorrect beliefs in the Kremlin that strangely echo the beliefs in Washington when Iraq was invaded back in 2003. The belief that recurs through history that when we invade, people will welcome us. When we start the war, it will be a quick war. So I think we have to be very alive to the inability at the moment to rely on totally rational decision-making. I do think there are many sane people in military and defence establishments, and many people in those establishments who have a extremely strong interest in averting war because they see and pay the costs. So I don't want to say the whole world has gone mad, but I think there are heightened risks of miscalculation these days. And we're also seeing an erosion of multilateralism and international law, which has been going on for some time, but it's speeding up now and very visible in what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. It's playing out in a way that will be directly relevant to most people in the world, because in the coming weeks and months, most people are going to be paying higher bills for their energy and for their food. And I hope this is a moment where people who support peace and conflict prevention can try to communicate that investing in risk reduction, investing in conflict prevention, really is a great use of the world's resources because the costs of war are so high. It's very difficult to communicate the value of conflict prevention. Most of the time, people haven't really been appreciating the fact that mostly shipping works. Trade can flow around the world unhindered. And most of the time, people don't appreciate the huge daily work that is going into maintaining nuclear non-proliferation and maintaining deterrence. I think people take these things for granted and don't realize the kind of constant vigilance and activity that is required to prevent things from getting worse. Maybe this is becoming more visible as we are in a world with a greater risk of losing some of those things. That we can help to think about how those things that we take for granted, whether that's having the post, having passports, having agreement on what the time of day is, all of this requires international cooperation that we take for granted. International law began with the law of the sea because of that common interest in protecting shipping and being able to trade. And the modern UN started 80 years ago with the need to prevent war and bring atomic weapons under control. January saw the 80th anniversary of the first meeting of the UN General Assembly here in London, in Westminster Central Hall. And the very first resolution that was passed was about the need to control atomic weapons, but also to enable the world to benefit from nuclear technology. So it's always been part of the fabric of modern multilateralism, even before the full knowledge of the effects that those weapons could have or the concept of a nuclear winter. It was very clear to the people that had survived the Second World War and led their countries through it that there was an overriding common interest of mankind in keeping nuclear weapons under control. And I think today we need a new generation of people who will stand up for that kind of thinking in an era where every day we're hearing a lot of the zero-sum logic of arms racing and dominance. I'm not saying that, people are wrong to be concerned about the state of defences and the state of readiness for potential conflict. But countries may be failing to keep in mind what everyone stands to lose from the arms race dynamics that we see now, because in a context of insecurity, there is this tendency to retreat into narrow self-interest and to think about how to protect a subgroup or how to win in a more competitive global environment. We can see a huge amount of criticism of the Non-Proliferation Treaty and the state of the international arms control architecture, but it is worth remembering also that there are still the preventative successes. We have a prohibition on nukes in space and on the seabed. We have whole regions of the world in Africa and in Latin America where there are agreements to have nuclear weapons free zones and where disarmament has happened and it has been sustained. We have still, although it's fragile, a global moratorium on nuclear weapons testing in the CTBT, which is a fascinating example of a treaty because it's unlike a lot of treaties which exist but are ignored. It is a treaty that has not taken legal effect, and yet it is effective. Only North Korea is outside that moratorium, and it is shunned as a result of its nuclear behaviour. Even that test ban treaty now is at risk. There are suggestions that the US could resume explosive nuclear testing, as you know, and the US claims that China may have secretly tested. But we should remember that invisible work of prevention and place a higher value on it, because if it is lost, we have something all to lose. On a daily basis now, I read things in the British media where apparent wise men write that international law is a superstition of the past, that it is an old religion that people are clinging to out of a kind of nostalgia. I think if we do let it go, we would regret very much cheapening it. And I think that making the case for the importance of the basic principles of international law, now is the time to do it. And I hope all of you can be part of that in the work that you do. Thank you so much.
Now give the floor to Professor Shang, asking to not be shy and move a little bit, a little bit to the left or to the right, because you're exactly behind the column.
Okay.
I can swap with you.
Yeah. Is that okay?
Yeah, fully behind the column.
Take this seat. I think
That's
it's
okay.
in the middle.
I think it would be better for people from home also to be able to see you. If
Okay.
you can move maybe to the
Okay.
chair to the right. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay.
Musical chairs, we keep doing it. Okay.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me thank you all to come to our university to have this meeting. I feel very grateful for the Pugwash to have the meeting here to support each other, and also support my center on the biological security education mainly. Second, I want to say Jen has provided a good background about the things about the various topic and the things you want to discuss, hopefully today and later on. I just want to expand a little bit wider in other angle on the biosecurity angles, because although Pugwash is focused on the nuclear to start with, but now it's the biosecurity and other chemical ones integrate together. I want to mention that a bit. So that is the aim. Our center, especially Olivia, started her PhD and doing the biosecurity education, biosecurity issues. We suggested her and encouraged her to broad her angle, broad her vision to looking at not just the biosecurity and the chemical weapons convention and the nuclear ones. Of course, all the evidence shows all these things are improved. They should be integrated and collaborated, working together. So that is a good way to move things forward. So for the details of the things, as Jen just provided, there's a lot of the things let the people thinking all this threat is near you every day, not remote area, thinking about the Second World War, and also thinking about the nuclear weapon. And we must have the war to show the people or state party can use this to bring the damage. It happens, similarly, not exactly, the war happens every day in the corner of the world. So give people some pressure, some passion to carry on this work. Although there's millions of people doing the different job from the state party, from the international organizations, from us, from the young generations, you will go into that route in some stage, but it's nothing wrong with starting to do the education to start with, to get the grasp of the key element of these conventions and in both biosecurity, chemical, and the nuclear, and even radiators. Then it's coming to how we're going to do that. Certainly, we'll focus on the dual-use research of concern, right? And we're thinking why we develop this science and technology. And the science technology has been fast move every day. And, the AI, synthetic biotic, biology, and nanomaterials, nanotechnology is happening every day. And the AI just transformed the world completely. You will have, I hope you will have come to the meeting next year, then you can recall what the AI has changed the world. So that is something we need to think harder, the dual-use research of the concern. what's the best way to make a good use of this science and the technology, and in the other way, how we can prevent any risk it might pose on. It would come from the different angles and from the different reasons for the bad application of the advanced science and the technology. Some of them is just no awareness of their work can bring the bad damage, can bring the things. Some of the scientists, they are very, very ambitious. They try to invent and develop new skills. They want to try to prove they are number one of the world. Nothing wrong, but they are not aware that work has potential dangers. So we need to teach them. We need to raise their awareness. That's the first thing. Second, we have to raise awareness for those people who deliberately trying to use this advanced science and the technology to make a weapon to using in the war. Potentially, every state parties have the laboratories doing this kind of job. They just couldn't disclose themselves, but I'm sure you agree with me. So that's another way of thinking. We need to get the awareness for those people, especially state party, to get them have some governance, have some bottom lines, and have their research get controlled so that we can make whatever purpose they want to do, because we can't change them. But the reason the awareness is let them be careful and know the real damage of that is really, really issue. We can't let this happen, because we can't just say this is happened, this is evidence, the bad fact is brought to the people, then telling them you shouldn't do that. This is the wrong logical way. We should prevent that and to showing things. We can link some of the incidences to show people if we can't get things controlled, we can't put the proper measure and governance in there, something might be wrong. For example, the COVID. We still don't know what's the real reason of the COVID, but it's just a good example and the case study to remind everyone from every level to see these things could happen. And even the naturally occurred, it would suggest and encourage scientists to find the reason to working with the naturally occurred things to get the things in some way get it controlled. So that is my second term on the due use of research of concern. The third one is we must put into the applications. We must let everyone know, not the small group of people like my center doing this research and promote this education. We want everyone to doing this, okay? So, and everyone has some knowledge and has some sense about these things. That is a crucial way of doing things. I think that is also very, very important for a group of you to consider what kind of job and what kind of project you can link. I'm sure you will be encouraged to do all the different things in different angles, international laws and other international relationships, etc. But don't forget, you can always focus areas in education. That is our, I'm very pleased to report, Oliver and I designed the project. We applied the biosecurity education into school, in her old school, and to try to talking to kids. And we are very surprised to know kids know a lot of things about the biosecurity than we thought, because they met and they use the science technology every day, and they have the different angle of the thinking things. When we're talking about the new science and the technology about the mirror life, and linking to the biosecurity, one of the students linking the mirror life about the religions is quite a unique angle. I certainly never thought about before. And you can see they have their own ideas. They have linked all kind of things. So that is the example I want to say. when you do your work, don't forget there's sessions, if there's portions, you can do the education. Education covers a lot of the things. For example, our center is promote biosecurity education and trying to build up international biosecurity education network, which is similar to your nuclear, international nuclear security education network, which has been produced or, done 10 or 20 years, 10 years ago, and running really relatively successful. We want to borrow on each other, the good practice, the good exercises, etc. Based on that, we have, Oliver can tell you about our website and our web page. We really want to integrate these different angles, these three different parts together. And also, while in the process of the developing a MA course or MSc course, depending what the background the students come from in biosecurity. That is something I want to just open it up to provide some discussion food for you guys to think about, and how you can integrate all the things together, how you can link the fast science and development together, how you can link the everyday life together, how you can persuade the policymaker to take your advice or suggestions. To be fair to say, biosecurity BWC has a slowing progress compared to the chemical and the nucleus. And you probably already know the working group has been set up to address this issue, but the process is reasonably slow. We summarize this education progress. We just thinking the state party need to do the action now. And also you can see all these 20 years of the process of the biosecurity education is pushed, or I wouldn't say lead, it's just pushed by the civil society, people like us. So I'm sure you all have a more discussion, more topic around these ones, but don't forget about how you can link everything together. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think we're slightly ahead of time, so we're going to have 35 minutes for Q&A. About that. So now the floor is open if you have any questions for our speakers. There's one question over there. Also online, people, if you have any questions, raise your hand. Yeah, you want to use the microphone? Thanks.
I think, yeah.
Hi, I'm Daljit Singhali of Sunup Fusion, fusion energy company in China. Thank you for the talks. One of the things it really highlights for me as a physicist of coming into this area is, from a sort of system perspective, there's like a mutual vulnerability that you need for disarmament. And that's not something we necessarily have a political culture of anymore. So with the end of the START Treaty, I saw some reviews of, CTBTO and all of these treaties that were signed during the Cold War. And actually the US pulling out of the anti-ballistics treaty in the early 2000s sort of led to a lot of escalation in the ballistic programs of different countries and also the defense systems. And you sort of see that the wars that do happen are often very asymmetric. One country thinks it can destroy another country, even if it's its neighbor, in the case of like Russia and Ukraine, or like at the moment with Iran. Iran is far away from America. Iran can't attack America. So as if you have like, okay, we can attack Iran. Iran can't attack us. Israel has a lot of air defense, a lot of anti-ballistics. So okay, Iran can attack Israel, but has a very low success rate for the strikes. So I guess the question is, how do you move towards promoting mutual vulnerability? You see, Keir Starmer goes on the TV and says, we're going to buy more F-35s that can drop nuclear weapons. We have the French president standing up in front of warships and submarines, talking about deploying. I struggle to see the human or the political process where somebody stands up and says, we need to make ourselves more vulnerable so then we don't attack somebody who will then eventually develop WMDs to potentially attack us back. Thank you.
If there are other questions, we can group 2-3 questions all together and have our speakers replying. Otherwise, it's fine replying to this one first. Okay.
So yeah, very interesting question. I can't see you. I'm going to come around a little bit. So I think what's interesting to me is that the deterrence between the US and Russia itself depends on mutual vulnerability because of exactly that idea that there's the fine balance for deterrence to continue, that each side has to believe that if they attack, they will get attacked back in a way that hurts them. And I see that people who are really engaged in the deterrence community and the practice of deterrence, they are very interested in psychology and in empathy because they need to understand it's not just about the numbers of missiles, it's about the ability to hurt each other in a way that matters to the leaders. And people do also have questions about how that might evolve in the future with different leaders and different countries that might have a higher tolerance for civilian losses than is currently being predicted. And I looked back recently at NATO summit communiques from previous years to try to see, like, where did they mention Iran? Because NATO has only mentioned Iran in the past few years, but there was an interesting one a few years ago where NATO was publicly stating, we have this ballistic missile defense in Southeast Europe because of worries about missiles from out of the area. They meant Iran, but they didn't say Iran. But they were publicly sending a message to Russia in the communique that this isn't us increasing our missile defense against you, because there is an understanding that even increasing defenses might upset the balance of deterrence. So although we see these arms races, we do also see that there is a certain awareness of there being a balance to strike, which I think is very interesting. I don't know if disarmament in the future will follow the same paths as in the past, but I think something else that we've seen that was interesting with the US and Russia was that there was a really big role for the specific leaders. It really is an issue where I don't think the bureaucracies tend to favor change. You try to get bureaucracies around nuclear deterrence that favor stability, but you have seen, after the Cuban Missile Crisis, a realization by the leaders that things must change, we must communicate, we must start to have agreements. And with the history of Reagan and Gorbachev, I think a lot of that seems to have depended on those specific leaders and them, Gorbachev taking a view both about nuclear weapons and about the path his country would take, and Reagan apparently being really influenced by things he had read and seen about nuclear dangers, including film, including fictional movies in the 80s that brought to life this hypothetical threat. And then, of course, there's the cost argument as well. So, there have been moments where Trump has said things that suggest that he's interested in what he's referred to as denuclearization. We know that he admired Reagan. We know that he was interested in watching Reagan and Gorbachev have those summits because it appeals to his sense of leadership and making history. And so some people in the nuclear policy community in the States have wondered, could something come from Trump? Because you don't know. But it probably would take a president with a very strong belief and a willingness to cut through people that will be around them saying, don't change things, it's too dangerous. We did see Barack Obama care about nuclear weapons. And, he talked about advancing multilateral nuclear disarmament, but he didn't really push that through. he did take the big step of making the nuclear agreement with Iran, although that's not something that weakened the US in any way, but it did show the sort of, again, the importance of like the absolute top level leadership in changing a pathway that has become quite path dependent, basically. Really interesting question. Thank you.
I just want to, Jen has provided a powerful answer. I think I agree with what she said. I just want to probably just adding a little bit my thought. I always thought for those kind of the armament control and disarmament debate, it's coming from the power. If you don't have a power, you don't have a say. This is true. Whichever you agree or not, the history tell the truth, and also the different state, the economic development of the state party decide in some way how they want to process and progress this way. And you can see, I'm sure I'm Chinese, I wouldn't comment too much on China, but China has, with the economic development, it has the power to pursue whatever he want or it want, okay? And you can't stop China to doing things. But if you don't have this economic background to supporting you, it's a different matter. Another thing is a strong leadership is really, really key. You would say if the strong leader can change the world, UK, if you have a Winston Churchill, we mentioned this several times, even Donald Trump to say you were not dealing with UK with Winston Churchill. That would give the world a different way of developing or going. If Trump wouldn't be the president, I just cannot imagine, the world would happen in this way. If Clinton being elected as the first female president, the world maybe changed differently. Leadership, and it's really, really sometimes can decide. But I think the leadership is growing from the education he or she get. And so I'm coming back again, although it's slightly remotely related, education provided the information and solid evidence to those people, to the state party, to the policy maker, to the deciding maker, and they will use their knowledge, they use their power to make a right decision. That's what I want to emphasize. Psychology sometimes also important. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're going to have just enough time for a final round of questions. I also would like to ask a question, but you can go first. Oh, okay.
Hello. What needs to happen for policymakers to move fast on bioweapons, and what about the system disincentivizes that action?
I may are there any other questions? A very sharp question, so maybe it's better for you to reply first to this.
I could say something on the politics. Maybe you can say something on what needs to be done. But in the UK, I think bioweapons is taken quite seriously, and there is some important research going on. I think there is no political capital to be gained from it because the public doesn't know and doesn't care. I found it really interesting that just before the 2024 election, which was a snap election, there was an announcement of a UK biosecurity research fund, and there was also an announcement by the government about the need to be more thinking about resilience and preparedness in case there was a war, learning from programs that exist in places like Sweden and Finland, and thinking about things like having stocks of bottled water in your house. And at that time in British politics, everyone just thought this was hilarious, especially because the election had just been called at the same time. So the main response of people who paid any attention to it was, this government's just telling us what a disaster they are again. What's the disaster we see coming? It's going to be the Tories at the election, and that was the public mood. And it was quite, I thought it was quite funny, but it was quite concerning because there was this real threat. But I think there is a big skepticism, especially after COVID, about government security announcements. There's a very large constituency in this country and other countries that think governments are just hyping up these threats because they want to control us. And that is really worrying to me. So part of the preparedness, I think, also has to be about rebuilding some trust. So that doesn't tell you anything about the actual bioweapons, but it's about the political climate to support these efforts and also to think about how do you build resilience in case something did happen.
Yes, I just want to add in a little bit on the things of how we can deliver, how we can action. The matter of the truth is people now exposed to the biosecurity or bio risk every day more and more. And you have to remember, biosecurity is not just relating to the health in the medical, like the COVID, etc. And this also included in the animal, plant, environmental. This biosecurity risk and bring the big impact in the government, the policy and the decision and the strategy. For example, if the food supply chain being broken or food supply has been stressed, and it will come into the big problem and chaos in the society. So these kind of the angles of the biosecurity would bring even better effect than some of the small part of the science and technology brings. So all these things has integrated into people's everyday life, and COVID is just after COVID, the biosecurity issue has been escalated to the very, very high level. So people always think about this when they may address their policies. They have to taking that into the consideration. Even now, the war happened. We have the energy crisis. This is a security issue linking to the national security. So that's what I said. We need to consider them integratedly, not isolated, and also thinking about the collective way of how we can borrow some of the good practice in certain areas to the others. And by the end of the day, I still come back to my center's aim is education. Provide the useful, powerful materials, a lot of the case studies to show the people what this can bring them, what can affect their decision making, and how this process can be done to prevent some things happen. And we're just in the middle of the collaboration with the education company. They designed the software. They are trying to simulate and in what condition the disaster, the diseases can be spread out, and in which speed they can spread out. We want to add in some element to show how we can do the convention and the intervention, and what things we can do. This intervention can include some physical ones and some of from the policy angles to bring the impact in this cycle. So all these things has a lot of the things to be considered. And I'm just academic. I have no background of the policy whatsoever, but I want to using my angle from the education and awareness side to move this a little bit forward. Thank you.
If I might, I think there's another question more. No? Okay, short questions. We're going to go for 2 short questions. And do you have a question more? Okay. Mind if I'm going to go over a very, very short question, and pick out all the 3 questions and then finish the session. The question I have for you, for both of you actually, is that I am personally a PhD in physics, so I come from the STEM side. I'm learning a lot about policies, and an overlap in your speeches has been about what science can teach us. And I'm particularly passionate about this because we talk a lot about the threats that emerging technologies can bring to the world, but we don't talk enough, I think, to the opportunities and to what these rapidly evolving technologies can bring to us. So, question more specifically for Jane, I am very interested to hear your take on how the CTBTO, on the nexus between science and international relation and security, about the CTBTO and further thoughts on this. And for Lijun, question about what's your perspective on how these evolving technologies on bio or more in general, if you like, can impact the positively the world of security, international security? Thank you.
Thank you for, this very interesting session and discussion. And actually, when I hear always the discussion about non-proliferation and reducing, of course, WMD, I can't help but thinking about it from the perspective of countries themselves. And if I look at it as a head of state, I'm like, what's in it for me in there if I reduce WMD, if I don't use this technology? What do I gain? And what is my advantage for not going for this technology? Because if I look at it in a very realistic perspective, I'm like, oh, so the permanent members of the UN Security Council are all nuclear powers. So, and they have different ideologies. And we always tend to think, I think personally, a little bit too much about this Western versus non-Western spectrum. And I'm like, so I'm a country, I don't really know yet how to ensure my security, but also my territorial integrity. And what is the alternative to that? Because I think, unfortunately or not, when it comes to the application of international law and international peace and security, unfortunately, some of the, let's say, failures of the system have fed the desire for some countries to go further away from arms reduction, let's say. So I'm curious about this. How does it work from a more psychological point of view? If you want to convince a leader, they need to, like, what's in it for me and my population? How do I make sure that I'm not invaded by my mortal enemy on the other side of the border? Quite a few countries could identify to that, I'm assuming.
Last question, if you want. If you want to go, if it's sharp and direct, you can go with it.
My question is for Prof. Shang. So at what age should we start biosecurity education, or at what stage should we start biosecurity education? Yeah, that's my question. Thank you. At what age?
What age?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Thanks so much for talking about the opportunities of science and technology. I should have really highlighted this more, because it's very easy for us to take a fatalistic view. Oh, AI is coming for us. We are designing. Well, I'm not designing it. I don't know how. Some of you are going to be designing these technologies. We have the responsibility for what they are like. Do you write codes for AI that is benefiting humans? Or do you write codes for AI that picks up the worst of humans and starts to spout racist nonsense? There's a huge movement around AI for good, which I think is very important. I'm sure this applies to many other technologies as well. What are the assumptions you're putting into the algorithms? What are the purposes that you're baking in from the outset? I do worry that because we are making these huge leaps in AI at a time of arms racing and global competition, I think there is a risk of baking that kind of logic into the technology that we're developing. But I also see hope in that there are so many engineers and technology leaders who have a strong sense of collective interest and common interest and progress. I find the fact that you've seen Anthropic just stand up to the Department of Defense very interesting, although it is facing that cost in terms of losing government contracts. You're seeing many engineers speaking out about the use of AI in the military, the need either to ban it or have guardrails. So, it is an area of contestation, and you can shape it for the better. I think if you ever get the chance to visit the CCBTO in Vienna, it's a great thing to do. Maybe you can do a pug wash tour because they show you their huge data gathering infrastructure and how that can be used for loads of other peaceful uses, including predicting earthquakes, for example. Why should heads of state not go for nuclear weapons? A lot of heads of state are asking that question, but there are good arguments, chiefly cost, danger, and bluntness. It's not necessarily a very good instrument to use against a lot of security threats. Nuclear weapons may be able to defend you against an existential risk of invasion. If Iran had a nuclear weapon, it wouldn't be being attacked by Israel, but it would still face internal unrest, environmental crisis, frustration with the mismanagement of the economy, problems with its neighbors, ethnic insurgencies, all sorts of things that the nuclear program will not ever help with. So for a lot of countries, it's also about how is that relevant to your real security needs and broadening that conversation out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to add a little bit on this, on your questions and the things. I think it's touched about the economic background. If you have this ability to deliver those things, that's one thing. Some of these just can't have this. It's need to be. They develop the nuclear weapon, they have to protect themselves as well. They need to know how to use that. If they can't protect themselves, that's useless. You will kill yourself first before you use to the others. So this require a high technology understanding and production, all the things combined together. So some of the state party just cannot do that. Some of the small states may have the ambitious leaders may have this dream, but the dream not coming true. So the reality will tell you you have to develop your economic first, then before you can pursue those kind of the things. Second, for those of the countries who have this ability to do, is coming to very different angles of the reasons and politically about the current situation, current circumstance, and the economic development in the country, and the priority of the country and others. So it's complicated. I haven't done this research. It's just my understanding and feeling on that. And thirdly, they need to keep the balance right. To have the power to speak in the UN, in the United Nations, and each of the countries, some of the countries always have the dream to be the permanent member of the council. They never happened. This is a balance that have to be stick and discussed. So. In the meantime, the permanent members of the councils always thinking how they can preserve their power and others and keep the balance and play a more important role. So it's complicated, to be fair to say. And for the others, if they have this nuclear power, they have they can speak out. They have the power to say, to threat other countries. Come to the biosecurity ones, the advanced science and the technology can be easily manipulated and used to have the similar or the effect they want to use to show they can make things happen. In some way, I think maybe give some hope for those of the small countries who haven't made the nuclear weapons to think about they might have the cheaper solution to do some other things. But by the end of the day, it's coming to say we must make this science and the technology in the good use rather than the bad ones. The scientists themselves sometimes wouldn't know. And also, they change their mind if they get, you see the movies, the scientists change their mind and change their fight on using the nuclear weapons along the time, along its development. And this would exactly the same in the biosecurity issues as well, on the advanced science and the technology using the in the biological weapons. So by the end of the day, it's coming back to let them maximally exposed to this knowledge, maximum open up the discussions to find out what is the bottom line to doing things. A lot of the new science and the technologies, people don't know what they can bring to. For mirror life, there's a hot debate to say we shouldn't support this mirror life research. And in AI as well, all these things we need discussion, and we need to drag the scientists into this discussion. And also we need to let the scientists debate with the policymaker and understand their angle, and both sides understand their stance, so that we can make the things understand better. And another way for the governance things need keep updated regularly. And every year, the science just develops so fast. We need to update. And for the genes and synthetic biology, as the same questions as well. The drug development has been used and has been achieved a great success in this area. But in the other part, maybe we have a lot of things to think about. So certainly, open discussion, understand each other, and updated governance is the key to move things forward. A lot of things we just don't know. So we need to discuss.
Thank you very much. Join me for the last round of applause for our speakers.